I want to welcome everybody to the forum tonight and thank you for joining us on what has turned out to be a very hot July evening. And so we're glad that you're here. Things may get heated a little bit in here, but I doubt that they'll get as hot as they are outside. I'm Tony Brown. I work at the community college here in town, and I'm serving as your moderator tonight. I want to thank all the candidates for being here as well. We appreciate you coming. Many of them have come from a long distance, and so we're going to try to give them as much time as possible. I want everybody in the audience now to do this with me. I want you to take out your cell phones, and I want you to turn them either off or to vibrate. Okay? If a cell phone goes off, whoever's cell phone that is has to go get ice cream for the crowd. A little housekeeping items. Restrooms are located in the back of the auditorium. The women's restroom is on your left. The men's restroom is on your right. If you have questions to ask, we encourage you to write those down. I have prepared some questions, but I would much rather ask your questions than mine, and I'm sure you agree with me on that point. All questions from the floor need to be directed to both candidates, and we'd like to refrain from them being personal questions. I'd like to thank our sponsors. The Ottawa Area Chamber of Commerce Legislative Action Committee helped to put this together, as well as the Franklin County Farm Bureau Association. Both those organizations work hard to promote these kinds of legislative and electoral events, so I think we should give them both a hand for their work. I want to thank the City of Ottawa as well for providing the Municipal Auditorium here for this event. And I'd also like to thank a couple of guys that were here early this morning when I came to make sure the hall was going to be ready. Paul Sommer, he's taking care of the sound tonight, so he's back there monitoring each one of the microphones. And Matt Simonson is filming the event, and we'll put it on the public access channel for those people who could not be here tonight. We're going to move pretty quickly tonight. And so we want to give enough time for people to respond to questions. There will be 2-minute opening statements for each of the candidates who have opposition in the primary. Then there will be 3 questions. If there's time, I will sneak in a 4th question from the audience. 90 seconds for each candidate to respond to those questions, and then a 1-minute summary. We're going to start at the top and do the national races first, and then move down to local races, so the county races will be the last ones that we'll do. So, without any further ado, we're going to do the United States Senate race first. And we have Chad Taylor, who's a Democratic candidate for the Senate, and Pat Weisner. Gentlemen, first, 2 minutes.
Good evening, and thank you for coming out and participating in our democratic process. A little bit about me. I'm a farm kid who grew up outside of Topeka in a small farming community called Silver Lake. For those of you who track high school football, we're kind of good at that. The last couple of years, anyway. Wanted to touch base. I'm the youngest of 3 boys. My dad built grocery stores. My mom was a housewife. Did my undergraduate degree at the University of Kansas. Went to law school in Chicago. And came home and started out my career as a street lawyer in Topeka, Kansas, representing families and small businesses and builders and developers and their employees from time to time when they got in trouble. About 2006, there were several people who asked me to consider running for district attorney in Shawnee County. I did that, was successful at it, and inherited an office that was completely broken. It's not that much different than the climate that we presently face in Washington. In doing so, we had about 4,000 cases that were in a case backlog that hadn't either been upped or downed or charged or not. And that was over 4,000 people that had been denied justice. That number this morning is about 110. I'm very proud of that fact. In addition to that, we've started a cold case homicide unit that we've been able to bring closure and justice for over a dozen families in Shawnee County. And our office is run on the basis of pragmatic problem solving. We see an issue, we see a problem, we address it, we go after it, and we try to deal with it in the best interest of our community. Overall, I'm a very moderate person. I look at issues and problems not as Republican problems or Democratic problems, but what are the solutions that our community really needs. I've worked my entire career with Republican police chiefs and Republican sheriffs, and not one time in those 6 years have I ever looked at them and said, you know, I think I'm going to filibuster you on getting a search warrant because you're of the opposite party. Thank you.
Mr. Wisner, 2 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Pat Wiesner. I'm a candidate for the U.S. Senate. I want to thank the Chamber for this opportunity for us to be able to speak with you tonight. I'm a Kansas attorney, an Army veteran, and a proud Democrat. I do have some connection to Ottawa. My childhood friend and second cousin, Gerald Wiesner, lived here for 22 years, and he recently moved to Overland Park. My niece, Rachel Getz, grew up in Ottawa, and she graduated from high school here. I am the get-out-of-debt candidate, not a normal position taken by a Democrat, but one that all of us believe to be a worthy goal. My Senate work will be guided by the principle that we don't rely on borrowed money for today's government spending. I believe that the government we want can work. We have enough economic power, agricultural wealth, and energy resources to fully fund our generous government. Historic priorities show us to be the champions of education and ensuring there is a safety net for the poor, and I intend to continue those traditions. The spending I oppose is giving money to foreign nations, to federal subsidies for private business, and paying for projects ordered by lobbyists. Kansas voters, we can make this election great. Let's reject the Washington incumbents who can't say no to lobbyists. I ask for you to consider me for your Democratic Senate nomination on August 5th, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's get right at it. The national news cycle has been dominated recently with stories regarding the influx of as many as 57,000 immigrant children from Central America to this country. The situation is perceived by some people to be a good example of the need for reform of our national immigration system. What specific proposals would you make for improving federal immigration policies? And Mr. Wiesner, I'm going to let you have the first shot at this question.
Yeah, first of all, we need to make sure that those children that are coming here are fed and kept safe while they await their return to their home country. I support intervention in stopping those buses from leaving South America. With regard to overall immigration reform, I've served in the military with Hispanics and also had many of them as clients. I find them to be hardworking, they take care of their families, and they are patriotic. I don't want amnesty for those here illegally, but I believe we can set up special processing centers in northern Mexico where we can invite them that are here illegally to go back and process through in accordance with U.S. law, and when they've done that, we can welcome them back in our country.
Okay, Mr. Taylor.
You know, as the district attorney up in Shawnee County, we deal with this issue on a regular basis as it relates to individuals who've been caught up in the snare with criminality that are not citizens of our country. And I think what we have to do is we have to get real about this issue. We have to get an immigration policy. We have to get real on how we are going to treat and deal with this situation, because right now what we have is a bureaucratic mess to where individuals who try to immigrate into the United States are found waiting for months and months and months, sometimes years, waiting to work through the morass of the bureaucracy to get from point A to point B. We have to clearly define what that pathway is going to look like, what the steps are going to be involved, and then move forward from that. If you look at what's happening right now and the situation as it's been created, basically you have people that are wolves, that are predators on ignorant and ill-informed people that believe that they can pay them somewhere between $6,000 to $10,000 in order to deliver a better life for their children. And what they're doing is it's completely illegal. There needs to be a process put in place for the safe return of those children back to where they came from, and we have to have a hard conversation about how we're going to deal with this. As I've been traveling around the state and talking with large farmers and ranchers in western Kansas, they've made it very apparent that that is a labor pool that they have to tap into to be able to deliver a consistent and reliable food supply for the nation. So I think that we need to address that and have an honest conversation about it.
Okay, thank you. I got a question from the audience about health care, and it's not what you think. What is your stand on tort reform in health care? And Mr. Taylor, I'm going to let you have the first shot at this question.
Okay, I have in my prior life had been involved on the plaintiff side of dealing with medical malpractice cases. And what I will tell you is that there is a substantial disconnect between reality and perception. There are extremely tight caps on award damages in the state of Kansas. I do not believe that those caps are high enough that they are driving up the cost of health care. I believe that that is a situation that is formulated by the talking heads on the evening news to give them something to talk about. It's a situation that I think that the cap limits that we presently have for the protection of doctors, insurance companies, and to keep the cost of health care down at the state level are appropriate and adequate.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wiesner?
Yeah, this is an issue where we can use it to make the Affordable Health Care Act more cost effective. We have a system now where physicians and physicians' assistants and nurses do extra work because they perceive that if they don't do everything possible, that they will be sued. We can, through the Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution, limit or eliminate tort liability for medical malpractice. I understand there's about $150 billion a year paid by our physicians and hospitals in this each year to pay for malpractice insurance. Because we have the Affordable Health Care Act now, our government is effectively going to pay that bill. If we eliminate the need for insurance, by eliminating the ability to sue, we can save $150 billion a year. There'll be a trade-off. We'll have to have some sort of system in place to compensate those who are injured by medical malpractice, but the system we have now just costs too much in medical malpractice premiums. So that's the change I would make.
Thank you. This is a bonus question from the audience, and I'm going to try to squeeze it in addition to the other question I have prepared. I'm going to give each one of you 1 minute to respond to this. There's been a lot of talk about impeaching President Obama lately. Would you vote to impeach President Obama for treason? Mr. Wiesner?
I would not vote to impeach our president. I have served under him in the Army Reserve. He's my commander-in-chief. He's an American citizen. He's a gentleman. And he's got my loyalty and my support.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
I think that when you talk about something that is that grave of a consequence, I think that you first have to look at the facts, which is, I mean, it's not that different from moving forward in a criminal prosecution. You have to look at the facts that are laid out in front of you, and then you have to look at the law, and then you have to make an informed and advised decision on, was the behavior that was engaged in something that would amount to treason? Do the facts fit the law for that particular charge? If it's a situation that it works out, yes, then no, then no. But what I will tell you is that my opinion of what is being spun right now in the news cycle is not meritorious, at least at the level I've been informed of.
Okay. Thank you. Final question. I think everybody in the hall appreciates your willingness, both of your willingness to run for office. But an NBC News and Wall Street Journal public opinion poll conducted earlier this summer reported that the percentage of respondents who said they have a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in Congress is 7%. What would you do to help repair what is clearly perceived to be a broken system at the federal level? Mr. Taylor, you get the first shot.
I think the first thing that you have to do is to be honest with people. You know, Congress has that approval rating because they're not very good at what they do. They have, and the incumbent in this race is a perfect example. He's been there for 47 years. He's been a U.S. Senator for 3 terms and in the House for 16 years before that. You have to pick and choose your battles. You have to go to Washington with a purpose and with an intent. And when it's time to go home and go back and live under the laws that you have passed. You know, my intention of doing this is to do it for 2 terms, and then I'm going home. I have a nice farm in Northwest Shawnee County that I really like being at a lot more than I do being in Washington, D.C., and that's really it. We have spent so much time allowing special interests to buy and sell the future and the future direction and course that our country is going to take, and I think it's abominable. I really, really do. You know, the way our democracy was set up, it was never designed that, you know, we have, you know, 2 families between the Bushes and the Clintons, pick either one, that have spent, you know, decades leading this country. It was designed for new people with new ideas to step forward, lay out a plan and a vision for where they would ultimately like to go, serve their time, and go home. And I think that is a lot of the reason, is that the people don't feel as though they can compete with those tens of thousands of hundreds to millions of dollars that are being poured into political races, and they feel like their voice is being silenced.
Mr. Wiesner.
Yeah, what was the question again?
Well, that people don't think very much of government politicians, especially at the national level. How will you fix that?
As an Army attorney, I've worked on fiscal law as a deployed judge advocate, and I had to interpret authorization and appropriations law so that my commanders could know if their projects they wanted funding for were approved by Congress. When I read these laws, I could see they were populated with descriptions of groups that would get money, of special equipment to be bought, and projects to be executed. It looked like that was at a level of detail where the award of the government contract could have only been meant for a targeted group or a favored contractor. Lobbyists load these earmarks into spending bills, and they give it to the incumbent senator or House member to insert into the law. These are then buried in the must-pass legislation, such as authorizations for defense, homeland security, and agriculture. In exchange, the incumbents get arranged campaign contributions and promises of help against primary and general election challenges. This process, I believe, is bribery, and I intend to stop it.
Okay, a minute for closing statements. Mr. Wiesner, I'm going to let you close first.
Thank you, and I appreciate your attention tonight. Serving as your senator would be the highest honor I could ever ask for. In Washington, I could work on fair tax policy and budget law, and where we could come up with a plan that could cover our generous government and pay for off our national debt within 25 years. To the voters of Franklin County, I offer fresh thinking. When working on federal budgets, I will apply what I believe are 2 bedrock Kansas values. One, that we take care of the unfortunate who need government for food and shelter, and that we don't rely on borrowed money to, or have our children pay for today's government spending. So that's my main goal. I'm the Get Out the Debt candidate, and I ask for your vote on August 5th.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor.
You know, I think it's important to talk about a lot of different issues, and we have a minute to do it, so I'll get to it. Obviously, our nation is at a crossroads, and what I think is really important for folks to understand is that they have a moderate choice in this election. They have someone who wants to go back to PAYGO budgeting, the PAYGO rules, to where if you want to spend $1, you have to identify where it's coming from. We'll shut down the printing presses that are in the back office that are spending our nation's future out from underneath us. It's real simple. If you want to spend $1, are you increasing taxes or are you moving that dollar from someplace else? Beyond that, I think it comes down to leadership. And I think that we have an absolute leadership vacuum right now in our nation's capital. I think that if you look at what, as voters and as Kansans, what it is that we want, we don't need someone else going to Washington to take a pledge to some other special interest group to either do something or to not do something. My pledge to you is very, very simple. My pledge is only to you. I will do what is best by the people of Kansas first and foremost, and carry out the duties of being a United States Senator. That's my promise that I make to you. And thank you very much, and I too would ask for your vote on August the 5th. Thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen. That concludes this part of the forum. To the Secretary of State race and give Dr. Chris Kobach and Mr. Scott Morgan an opportunity to come up to the stage and answer a few questions. Dr. Kobach, lead off on the opening statement, so 2 minutes.
Well, good evening. The Secretary of State's office, as you probably know, is the chief election official for the state of Kansas, as well as the chief official in charge of administering business filings. But I want to talk principally about the election reforms that I have instituted and the legislature has helped enact over the past 3.5 years. In 2011, I introduced the Secure and Fair Elections Act, which made Kansas the first state in America to combine photo ID at the polls, equivalent security for mail-in ballots, and proof of citizenship to register. First state in America to do that. And right away, other states started copying us. Alabama has adopted parts of our proof of citizenship law, almost word for word. Pennsylvania has adopted a variation of our security for mail-in ballots. And so other states are noticing what Kansas is doing, and they're following. And the reason we did this is because voter fraud, our system had been based on trust for so many years, and when you have a system that doesn't have strong enforcement to ensure that our votes are fair, that the elections are conducted fairly, you do have abuse. And we had over 230 cases of election fraud that were presented to the legislature, as well as on top of that, about 70 cases of aliens registering to vote in the state of Kansas, including many of them actually voting. And every time an alien votes, it cancels out the vote of a U.S. citizen. These reforms have been very popular. Survey USA poll indicated that about 84 to 85% of Kansans are in favor of these reforms. But they have not been popular with the Obama administration or the ACLU. We have been fighting both of those entities in court to keep our reforms in place, and so far at the district court level, we have been successful in defending our reforms, and I have personally argued those cases. And I pledge to you, as your Secretary of State, that I will continue to fight to keep Kansas the #1 state in America in securing the integrity of our elections. It is absolutely important that we do this. You're going to see all kinds of races discussed tonight, and it is so important that we know if it's close and it comes down to one vote, that the right person won.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Morgan, 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, and thank you to everybody for coming out tonight. It's great to be in Ottawa. I very much appreciate it. This is a great crowd, and you guys should take pride in having this kind of interest. I am Scott Morgan. I am running in the Republican primary against Mr. Kobach for the office of Secretary of State. And I'd like to say real briefly, obviously I have 2 minutes, who am I and why am I doing this? I'm a 5th-generation Kansan. I was born and raised here in Shawnee. I graduated from KU, undergrad and law school, went to Washington and worked on the staffs of Senator Kassebaum and Senator Dole. I represented the United States Senate on the Federal Election Commission and then served as chief counsel for Senator Dole's presidential campaign in '88. After that, my wife and I were expecting our first child. We moved back to Kansas, and I served as chief counsel for Governor Mike Hayden. I was a Republican nominee for Congress in 1990, and after that didn't work out, I decided it was time to try the private side, and my wife and I started a publishing business that we worked on for 17 years until we sold it in 2007 to Congressional Quarterly. We took our 3 children to all 50 states, 48 of them in a minivan. That is what has prepared me for this office. I can do anything. But the 2 main reasons that I am running is, 1, I view this as a full-time job. We pay $86,000 a year for this job. Mr. Kobach involves himself in many things throughout the country, makes tens of thousands of dollars representing clients that have nothing to do with Kansas. The Secretary of State has had a tradition of quiet competence. It has been almost nonpartisan and giving Kansans comfort that their elections were fair and unbiased. And I believe we have lost a lot of that. And the second is, I am passionate about the right to vote. It's kind of a squirrely thing sometimes to say that you're passionate about the right to vote, but it is the vote upon which all of our other rights rest. And when the government starts telling me that because of fear, we have to limit your right to protect your right, I start getting very nervous. And I think the citizenship papers are unnecessary for something that worked 150 years in this state. And I look forward to discussing this to you further, but again, thank you for coming out this evening.
Okay, thank you. All right, now we know what the issues are. Let me get to the first question. Recent estimates are that as many as 19,000 potential Kansas voters have their voter registration in what is called in suspense due to failure to provide proof of U.S. citizenship. Do you believe this is the number of Kansas residents do you believe this number of Kansas residents having difficulty with voter registration is an accurate reflection of the level of voter fraud that has occurred in previous elections? What explanation or advice would you give to persons who are in this situation? And in addition, a news story that broke this afternoon, this voter registration has created a situation of dual voting, where some people can vote in federal elections and in state elections. And if you can, in the minute and a half you have, I'd like for you to comment on that. I know they're two different issues, but the issue of voter registration in general. Scott, I'm going to let you take the lead on this question.
Okay. I do think that it is a remarkably horrific problem to have 19,000 Kansans who tried to register, who filled out the same forms that I would guarantee most of you filled out in here today, but didn't provide enough citizenship papers, are not allowed to vote. He says that they could vote tomorrow if they take a picture of it and fax it in or email it in. The reality is you have Kansans who have tried to register to vote who can't, not counting all those who turned away because they didn't carry their passport or birth certificate with them. Instead of just doing a voter drive, you have to have those documents or you have to send them in later. My daughter tried to do it online. They got separated. She gets a rejection letter that she can't vote. It got solved, but that's because she had me as a father and we figured it out. It shouldn't be complicated. And then you add in a dual voting system for federal people who use the federal form, and you suddenly made a mess out of something that was working really well in Kansas. Other places have had problems. We haven't. And that's where I have a real issue with the right to vote. And when you start gumming it up all under the guise of we're protecting you, I think you have crossed a threshold into a very dangerous area where the government is starting to view it as a privilege that it hands out to you, to the chosen ones, to the right ones. We don't want that. Even the people we disagree with, we want them as part of the system. We want them all to be there. Because we only with a broad-based representative electorate do we have the strength of a republic to remain what we are. So I urge you to consider just what a mess we have made, and no problem was ever shown to be sufficient to deserve that. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, same question.
Yeah, the individuals that he was speaking of, the 19,000, those are individuals who have not completed their voter registration, and they registered after the law took effect on January 1st, 2013. Under the new law, you fill out the same card you did before, but we no longer just take a signature as proof that you're a U.S. citizen, because we had so many aliens falsely sign, whether they even knew what they were signing or not. Now you prove, if you registered after that date, if you registered before that date, you were grandfathered in, of course, and I assume that's most of us in this room. Those individuals simply haven't completed the process, and we made it very easy to complete the process. You can take a picture of it with your smartphone, you can email it in, you can make a photocopy, you can fax it if you still use fax machines, and if you want to take it into the county clerk's office, you can do that too. 87% of the people who've registered since the law went into effect have already complied, had no trouble, and I would submit that 83%, and I would submit that the 17% remaining aren't having any trouble either. We haven't found anyone who's been unable to comply with this simple process. It's just that people procrastinate. And many of them, I expect, are waiting until November 4th. It's still about 4 months away until we get to the general election, and we all know that a lot of people don't participate in the primaries, but once the time comes to participate in the general, we expect that they will. As far as the dual election, it actually affects only about 200 people in the state, and that is because of the Obama Justice Department's position in litigation right now. They are insisting that if anyone uses this federal form, which very few people do, that they be entitled to vote for the federal offices. And so, in compliance with various courts and Kansas law, we have to have a special situation for that very small number of voters. It won't affect anybody in this room, I imagine.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Let's shift from voter registration now to voter ID. Earlier this year, a federal court struck down a Wisconsin voter identification law that's very similar to the voter ID currently in Kansas. How is the Kansas voter ID law significantly different from the Wisconsin law so that it will avoid a similar fate and be struck down? Chris, I'm going to give you the first shot at this question.
I don't expect that Wisconsin decision will survive on appeal. The United States Supreme Court has already ruled in 2008 that there is no burden on anyone's constitutional right to vote if you ask them to provide a photo ID. No burden whatsoever. A federal district judge in Wisconsin came to that conclusion. I think his decision is very poorly reasoned. I don't think it's going to stand up on the Court of Appeals. But regardless, Kansas's law is different. Kansas allows more documents. For example, a university ID is acceptable even if it's from a as long as it's from a state institution. There are other forms of ID that are acceptable in Kansas than are acceptable in Wisconsin. So there are some distinctions. But I would say, put it this way, look, the ACLU has tried to defeat our laws in court. If they felt that the Wisconsin decision was applicable and they could use it to their advantage, I guarantee I'd be receiving some papers at the Secretary of State's office very soon because they'd be suing us. So I don't think they're going to prevail. Look, photo ID is a part of life today. You have to have one to board a plane, to cash a check, to use the kind of Sudafed that works. And if you live in Illinois, you have a photo ID to buy Drano now. I'm not quite sure why Drano is such a threat. But the bottom line is everybody has one. And if you don't have one, we provide one for free. And we welcome you to the 21st century when we give it to you. And if you're over the age of 65 or older, you can use an expired ID. You can use that favorite driver's license where you really had the best picture of your life. You can do our law is so easy to comply with, and Kansans overwhelmingly favor it, and that's why.
Okay, thank you. Scott, same question.
I know that voter ID is popular, and one thing you should know is just because something is popular, I'm not sure it's always the right thing to do. I think we need to go a little deeper than that. Yes, we have to use an ID for many common things, but again, remember we are talking about a right here, not a privilege. All these other things we talk about are privileges. You also have to talk about government regulation of any kind. Does it create more problems than it solves? Every regulation, particularly for those of us who are Republican, that's what you want to try to filter it through. When a government comes in to try to help something, solve something, you want to make sure it doesn't make a bigger mess than what you had. Again, in Kansas, we didn't have a problem with people impersonating voters. He talks about his 235 cases that he submitted. It really boils down to about 70 cases, of which only 5 are illegal aliens that may have voted over 15 years when you had 10 million Kansans vote. And you have all these people that he's almost dismissive of who have to cast a provisional vote if they want to because they've left their ID someplace. Women who don't have their purse with them, or men. I talked to a farmer, he talks about how you get off the tractor and you go in town, you don't have your wallet and you forget, they all know me, why is it that I have to have an ID? Well, because we wanted to do that, I guess. That was the thing. I sometimes feel like this has become a sport, that we want to see how many times we can take on the ACLU, or we can take on the federal government, or we can do this, or we can do that. Again, I want to return this office and voting in Kansas to the tradition that we have had and that has worked so well for this state.
Thank you, Scott. I want to encourage you, if you have questions for these gentlemen, to submit them. We're on my third question, and if there are no questions submitted, this will be the final question for them. What is the appropriate balance for the Secretary of State to assume between attending to Kansas issues versus advocating in other parts of the country on other issues that may or may not be related to Kansas issues? Scott, this is your question to respond to first.
We have two very different approaches to this, I believe. I think that it is a full-time job. It is a full-time professional job. You have your own time, but you cannot serve two masters as a professional. As an employer, if you hire a professional employee, an attorney, you expect the full services of that person. And if that person were making tens of thousands of dollars representing clients unconnected with your business, you would be outraged. You'd be livid. And if a Democrat were doing this, I'd offer that Republicans would be upset. But he calls himself the guardian of state sovereignty, that he's going about saving things because the other Secretary of States, apparently Jack Breyer and Bill Graves and Ron Thornburg, they played golf all the time. And he mocks them for the way they line up their shot, and they were worried about their putt at Topeka Country Club. And I think, those were really good Secretaries of State. They ran really good offices, and they focused on that office. I don't believe Mr. Kobach wants to be Secretary of State. I think he's an accidental one. And I'd like to relieve him of that duty so he can go out and be the guardian of state sovereignty if that's what he chooses to do. I'm not trying to make fun of him. I'm just saying we have two very different approaches to this. You can't make that kind of money representing Arizona, Fremont, Nebraska, cities in Texas, Pennsylvania, remain counsel on an immigration association, and then have a radio show in Kansas City. All of that unconnected to Secretary of State. And it just baffles me that we think that's okay. And so I really do think we need to focus on this. And we haven't even talked about the really boring side of it, the business filings, and all the things we can do to make that more efficient. So we do have different approaches.
Okay. Chris, same question.
I've been accused of being hyperactive and a workaholic, and I stand guilty of that accusation. I do this in my spare time, and I told voters in 2010, I'm going to continue to fight illegal immigration in my spare time. Some politicians play golf in their spare time. Some are very enthusiastic football fans, and they spend time in front of the TV in their spare time. I don't. I'm really boring that way. I spend spare time at my desk until way past midnight some nights, writing legal briefs, trying to stop the ACLU, but more often it's the Obama administration. Indeed, I'm representing 10 ICE agents right now in federal appeals court, in the Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. Those 10 ICE agents are suing the Obama administration because they have been ordered to break the law. They were ordered to break the law in 2012 on June 15th. And they were ordered because they were told not to deport anyone who claims they came to the country under the age of 16 and meet other certain criteria. It was that June 15th, 2012 order that has directly led to the crisis on our border. And that lawsuit is the only hope we have right now for bringing the Obama administration to heel and forcing them to acknowledge federal law. It is a lawless administration. Am I passionate about it? You bet I'm passionate about it. And I choose to do that instead of golf. He doesn't like it that I choose to do that instead of golf. I guess it's probably because he doesn't like my position on that issue. He says I can't serve two masters. Tell that to a working mother who's got a couple of jobs. I can walk and chew gum, and I expect most of the people in this audience can walk and chew gum at the same time. Point is, I choose to spend my spare time doing that, and I'm going to continue doing it.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're up to closing statements. We've got 1 minute for a closing statement. Chris, I'm going to let you go first.
You know, Mr. Morgan says that, well, 235 cases of fraud over a more than 10-year period. Look at the millions of votes that were cast. Well, I think many of the people see the hole in that. You people see the hole in that argument. The hole in the argument is you don't just do a ratio of fraudulent votes to non-fraudulent votes. You ask this question: are there close elections in Kansas? You're darn right they are. They occur all the time. In the last 10 years, from 2004 to the present, we've had 24 state legislative races or congressional races where the margin of victory was 50 votes or less. We had 8 races where the margin was 15 votes or less, and we had 3 where the margin was 5 votes or less, and we had 1 vote that was a dead tie that had to be settled by a coin toss in my office. The point is, when you have a close race, if you have 5 fraudulent votes or 10 fraudulent votes, then you can swing the race. And every time an alien votes, it cancels out the vote of a U.S. citizen. That's why we want the best system in America, and we have the best system in America to protect us against voter fraud. That's why Kansans like it, and that's why, if I remain in office, we'll keep it.
Scott, you get the last word, 1 minute.
Well, thank you again for coming out tonight and being so attentive. I really appreciate it. At least in the lights, you look like you were attentive, so those of you who are asleep, it's okay. I think you've had a good discussion here and showing the differences and the different approaches we would bring to this office. I think there are so many great things going on in this country and in this state. I get excited about it, and I think too often in this state we are so focused on so many negative things, and you think, well, you're running against a guy saying he's not doing his job. I'm running because I think the right to vote is being put at risk, and that is what has underlined everything that we do. When 19,000 Kansans can't vote, and he says they're procrastinators, and he brags about an 83% success rate of the people who actually filled out a form and tried to register, not talking about all the people who didn't even bother because they didn't have the papers. That's a tragedy. That's a C-. Well, maybe that's a B- at that point. It used to be 72%. We can do better than that. We need to believe in this again and not let fear trample our rights. That has happened to so many people. And it's coming out to events like this tonight that make it worthwhile. And I ask you to give me careful consideration. I'm Scott Morgan for Secretary of State. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We are going to move on now to the one candidate who is present tonight for the U.S. House of Representatives seat in District 2. So is Joshua Tucker here? Follow the same format, so we're going to give you 2 minutes for an opening statement. And so if you want to tell us who you are and why you're running.
Good evening. My name is Josh Tucker, and I am running against Lynn Jenkins in the Republican primary for the 2nd District House seat. The reason I'm running is because I believe that the Constitution is important. In fact, the Constitution is my special interest. That's my slogan. Lynn Jenkins, her slogan is, "I like Lynn." And I also like Lynn, but I like the Constitution a little bit more. I'm originally from Independence, Kansas. I'm a lifelong Kansan. My roots run back to before they predate Kansas as a state, so I'm a 6th generation Kansan. I currently reside in Pittsburgh, Kansas. I work for Pittsburgh State University, and I've been there for 9 years, and I do application development and systems analysis for Pittsburgh State. I've been studying the Constitution for probably since I've become a little bit more politically active, and I believe that the federal government is long usurped the U.S. Constitution. And that's one of the reasons why we threw off the tyranny of King George, is because in the Declaration of Independence it states that he suspended our legislatures, and he decided to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. And I believe the federal government is doing that with a top-down centralized government approach. So my entire goal is to return sovereignty back to the states. So if you'll vote for me on August 5th, I would appreciate it. I will work hard to restore sovereignty to Kansas. And I value the Constitution, which is a delegation of our own sovereignty to the government, and I will respect it, and I will try to rein in the federal government, all their overreach and the debt spending that they use to pay for it all. So I'm a constitutional conservative and a fiscal conservative. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joshua. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and we've touched on some of them before in the Senate debate. But give us your opinion about the immigration issue on the southern border. The immigrant children that are coming from Central America, for a lot of people, this is an indication of massive problems with our immigration policy and that it needs to be reformed. What kind of ideas do you have for reforming national immigration policy?
It's not necessarily a matter of reform. It's a matter of nonfeasance by our government. Nonfeasance means they're not taking care of the job that they were set out to do. There is an immigration policy in place, and it's just not being enforced. In 2009, the ICE, the Immigration Enforcement Group, bureaucracy, took a vote of no confidence in their in the head of ICE, and I believe that it's been carrying on ever since then. I don't think he ever did anything about it, and so we need to get tough on immigration. We do need to secure the border. We need to scale back the social benefits that the immigrants think that they'll have access to if they can just make it across that border. In the 50s, Dwight Eisenhower, he got tough on immigration, and he discouraged a lot of immigrants from coming forward, coming across the border, and a lot of them went back on their own, and the ones that didn't were sent home. And if we had a policy like that, they wouldn't think that America is where they need to be, and they might try and do it the legal way. If they did it the legal way in the first place, that would make me think that they had enough respect for our laws, and that they would follow our laws once they got here. So.
Okay, thank you. This is another issue that's not quite as recent, but one that we hear a lot about, and it's the Affordable Care Act. Since its passage in March of 2010, it's been under fairly constant attack. I'd like to ask about your position on the Affordable Care Act, if you would vote to repeal it, or if you think there should be substantive changes made in it, and if so, what those would be.
Concerning the Affordable Care Act, I don't believe the federal government has been delegated any authority to regulate health care or create any national health policy. I'm a constitutional, strict constructionist of the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8 is that delegation of powers, and the 10th Amendment states that the delegation of certain powers to the government by the Constitution are reserved The powers not delegated to the government by the Constitution, meaning the federal government, are reserved to the states and the people. And the federal government's never been delegated that authority. So I would vote to repeal it. My whole goal is to return sovereignty to the states. And on top of that, I'm a free marketeer. I believe that the market can handle things, that we don't need to always turn to the government to do things for us. I think that's maybe one of the reasons why Congress has such a low approval rating, because they keep on trying to take control over us. So,
Okay, thanks. The last question I have is similar to the one I asked the Senate candidates. You're working hard to join a club that's not very popular among the American people. What would you do to change the system in government that is perceived to be just a broken system at the federal level?
I believe the reason the system is broken is because the Congress currently doesn't respect the grant of authority that we the people gave them. I think it's been a long time coming that they need to scale back significantly. I believe it was 7%, the number you gave earlier.
7%.
I believe the federal government is at least 90% out of their bounds. So that ratio, 7 to 90, there's a 3% percent error there, I guess. And so that's the entire reason. I believe that the current people in Congress think that they can just do whatever they want and throw us to the wolves, meaning the Supreme Court. We have to fend for ourselves within the Supreme Court. The Declaration of Independence stated that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. So we shouldn't have to be constantly fighting for our rights. Our government should be protecting our rights. And so I think because they think that they need to secure privileges to all these special interests, that infringes upon our rights as citizens. And not to mention that they're doing a lot of things that are hampering the Bill of Rights. For example, the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012 had a provision in it that would allow for indefinite detention of U.S. citizens. And my opponent voted for it. That's one of the big reasons why I feel like I need to go up there instead of her, because I'm going to respect your 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th Amendment rights, which are infringed upon by the NDAA.
Okay, thanks. While you were giving that answer, I got another question about an amendment. This one concerns the Second Amendment. Where do you stand on arms rights in the Second Amendment?
I believe they are rights. I don't believe that they are privileges. I don't believe that the federal government's been delegated any authority to regulate firearms. And furthermore, it's been told to keep their hands off. It says, shall not be infringed. So because they've never been delegated any authority, they shouldn't be dealing with them at all. On top of that, in our state, if I might add, in our state we have the privilege to keep and bear arms how we want. There is an infringement. We have to ask permission and get put on a list if we want to conceal and carry. We need to have constitutional carry because that's what the Constitution mandates. If we don't like it, there's an amendment process and we can change it that way. But I'd suggest that we don't, because the right to keep and bear arms is a very significant right. It's protection against a tyrannical federal government, and we need to be very cautious at how we approach that.
Okay, thank you. There are no more questions that I have, so I'm going to allow you to have 1 minute for a closing statement.
Okay. Well, I think you might have a good idea of what I stand for. Strictly the Constitution, and that's it. I have a website, Tucker for Congress, if you want to know a little bit more about myself. I intend to go up there and have a discussion that's not currently being had. It's one that's on the behalf of we the people, the sovereignty of we the people in the states. And I believe that the federal government's far outside its bounds. The debt spending currently is astronomical. The debt spending today is a tax tomorrow on our children and our future generations, and I will not vote for that at all. I believe that we need to send somebody who will stand up to the Democrats in the Senate. The debt ceiling, Lynn Jenkins, my opponent, she capitulated to the Democrats, and she basically fell over when they said, we're not going to pass the budgets you guys keep on sending over. So the Republicans didn't stay tough, and they ended up funding Obamacare, which is a vote that Lynn Jenkins took. She voted to fund Obamacare and to increase the debt ceiling, and we got to stop doing that kind of thing if we're ever going to have a country left.
Okay. Joshua, thank you. Thank you for coming. Jennifer, again, is the only candidate here, so it's going to be another one-sided debate, but we wanted to have an opportunity to make some statements and answer some questions. And so Jennifer, 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Well, good evening, and thank you guys for coming out. I'm going to adjust this a little bit. My name is Jennifer Wynn, and I am challenging Sam Brownback in the Republican primary. I am a resident of Wichita, Kansas, born and raised in Wichita for the most part. I did live in Montezuma for a few years and had the privilege of John Denver being my babysitter, so that was kind of cool. But then we moved, and my father got into the aircraft industry, and that's where I was raised. I am a small business owner. I started 12 and a half years ago with my $100 in my pocket, and I was a master irrigation plumber. So I started digging trenches, literally, and putting in installing irrigation systems. I built that business over the last 12 and a half years, and I'm hoping this year to break the goal of $3 million in annual sales. I'm now in 4 states, and my goal is to be national. I am a very intelligent woman. I am very opinionated, and but most importantly, I have common sense, and that's something that we seem to be lacking in our state today, in our country for that matter. So I am an individual that I'm not corporately funded. I take no special interest money, no corporate money, because I stand for the people. And I think that we need to get back to the people. It is supposed to be the way our forefathers intended, and not with career politicians, not with somebody buying your vote or buying your position. But it's actually supposed to be representative of we the people. And so I stand for the people, by the people, and obviously business is something that I do quite well, and I don't spend something that I don't have.
Okay, thank you. Let's get to the first question. It has to do with state revenue. You probably know where I'm headed with this. Earlier this summer, it was reported that state revenues are $338 million below Kansas government estimates. If elected, how would you either make up for this shortfall in projected funds that we thought we were going to have, or would you raise taxes to make up for that? What's the plan for making up $338 million?
Well, there's a few things, and in 60 seconds it's going to be very hard to elaborate on every single one, but I will tell you that first and foremost, transparency is the utmost importance, because we've heard it, we've all been told that we're going to get it, but yet we don't. And transparency is something that's going to identify where the wasteful spending is truly occurring, and that can be corrected. There are 2 other issues that I have, because I grew up, as my grandma told me, you tell the truth. No matter how bad it is, always tell the truth. And the truth of the matter is 2 separate issues on top of the transparency. Number 1 is industrial hemp. We spend right now $17 billion every year to buy hemp from China. That's ridiculous. Farmers can benefit $200 to $300 per acre with a simple implementation. It's water saving, it's disease resistant, insect resistant. It's insanity that we have given all of those jobs and all of that money to another country. The other issue I would seriously look at is mass incarceration. We spend $132 million every year to incarcerate nonviolent, victimless criminals that we incarcerate at an average of 10 years versus somebody who committed a crime that knew someone that got 2 years for rape. That needs to be reevaluated, and reevaluated very quickly, so that we can put that money back into our budget and not raise our taxes.
Okay, thank you. Another major part of state spending is obviously education, and K-12 education certainly is among the bulk of the state budget. There's a task force currently convened to try to find some more efficiency in running the state schools and running the public schools in Kansas. If you were on that task force, if you were on that commission, what kinds of recommendations might you make?
I would first of all make the recommendation that we stop the overhead expenditures being higher than what's actually being produced. Anyone in business understands very clearly that you cannot have overhead that exceeds your production. If you do, you're upside down and you're bankrupt, which is basically where we are today. So what I would say is we need to start cutting the salaries of people that are making $300,000 a year, because that's basically stopping that money from getting to our children. And folks, children are our future. That's where we need to be prioritizing our funds, and that's not what we are doing. We are busy giving out jobs from anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000 a year that, number one, I don't feel is needed, and number two, they're overpaid. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Another issue that comes up frequently is Medicaid expansion in Kansas. Do you favor that? And if so, why or why not?
I do favor that, and I think that if we corrected and made transparent all of the wasteful spending, exposed 74% of the lobbyists who are paying our legislators to pass laws for the corporations they work for, that's unaccounted for, by the way, I think we would have more than enough money to expand Medicaid, and I think that we would be able to cover those 5,000 veterans that are currently without medical service. So in my opinion, it is, again, going back to the original form of transparency that we've all been promised that no one has delivered. And I think that once we do that, we have the capabilities to not only help our children, not only help our veterans, but we also have the capability then to step in and help the elderly and our disabled.
Thank you. Two questions from the audience that I want to squeeze in, and one of them pertains to immigration policy. My questions about immigration policy have sparked interest. The Texas governor, Rick Perry, has sent Texas National Guard to the border. Would you be in favor of sending Kansas National Guard to defend the border if you were Kansas governor?
You know, that's a very difficult decision, and I would have to, first off, I'd have to understand a lot more behind closed doors that we as the public don't get. I can't imagine as a mother ever sending my child away, not with the dangers set forth, such as, you know, murder, rape, who's waiting for my 8-year-old child when they drift out into the desert. So as a mother, I have a very strong concern as to why. Why are those children doing that? And what circumstances would I, as a mother, send my 8-year-old child out into a desert to cross a border by themselves? I mean, how bad is it, and why is it that bad? So I would have to have some significant questions answered that the general public, obviously, we don't get, before I could actually say what I would or wouldn't do with the reserve
Okay.
Guard.
All right. Thank you. One final question. Last week, several statewide former Republican officials came out endorsing Paul Davis for governor, the Republicans for Kansas Values. Do you perceive some dissatisfaction in the Republican Party? Is this indicative of that, or is this a different kind of issue that's coming out with this endorsement?
You know, all I can tell you for certain is that most of the people, and I'm going to be very honest because that's just who I am, most of the people that hold these positions in the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, I mean, to me it's just almost all one and the same anymore, but they seem to hold these views that are so far from the common working class individuals such as myself. So for me, I've had over 150 Democrats that signed over to Republican. I just didn't choose to make that a news story. So I think that mostly, I think it's just driven based on the campaign itself and who are you targeting. For me, I don't target other politicians. I'm not a politician. I am after the family voter. I am after the husband and the wife who works diligently every day to provide for their families. So I don't seek Democrats in office or that have been in office to endorse my campaign. I seek you.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions, so I'm going to give you a minute for a closing statement.
First off, I want to thank you again for your attention and giving me the opportunity to come and speak. I am not a multi-million-dollar candidate. I am just simply a taxpayer. I believe in limited government. I believe in transparency, and I don't believe we've ever received that from any candidate. Our forefathers did not intend on career politicians. I do stand for, because I too want to get in there, make the things right that should have been made right already, and I want to go home. And I want one of you to stand up and be the next person that says, you know what, I can serve my country without joining the armed forces. I can serve my country and my state by getting up as a real live person without $4 million, and I can run a good campaign. I can get out there and listen, and I can be a part of something good that will serve our future and serve the children that we want so much to protect.
Jennifer, thank you. Thank you for being here. For the Kansas House on the Republican side. So it's Blaine Finch and Bob Fluke. While they're coming up here, I want to introduce a couple of other candidates that are here but have no primary opposition. They're just in the general. So Kevin Jones is here. Kevin, you want to stand up and just wave to the audience? Kevin's a Republican candidate in the 5th District, and will have a general election opponent, but nothing for the primary. So you can vote for Kevin if you so choose in November. And then Scott Barnhart. Scott, where are you? Scott's way back in the back there. Scott, come into the light so people can see you. Scott's the Democratic candidate for the 59th. And so he's going to be the opponent for the gentleman here. I didn't realize you'd be here. Oh, you want to stand up and introduce yourself? Because I apologize. I do not have your name. And I apologize, Miranda. I'll help you out. Miranda Rickel, that was the candidate for the 5th District, will be taking on Kevin Jones in the fall. So she'll be in the general. So I apologize for not introducing you. Let's give those folks that are here that don't have any opposition in the primary election a big hand. Okay. For these two gentlemen, I'm going to give them 2 minutes, just like everybody else, for an opening statement. Blaine, I'm going to let you kick it off, so 2 minutes.
Thank you, Tony. I'd like to thank the Chamber's Legislative Action Committee for putting on this forum tonight, for the city for letting us use the auditorium. What a great facility built in honor of our World War I veterans, and how fitting that we're here to talk about who we should vote for and how we exercise that most sacred right that we have as Americans and as Kansans. I'm going to skip a little bit about me. I am an Ottawa guy. Most of you here know me. My career is as an attorney and business owner here in Ottawa. I'm owner of Finch, Covington, and Boyd downtown on 2nd and Main, just a block over. And most of you know me from some of the many volunteer activities that I've been involved in my time here in the city. But I had a constituent who brought her mother tonight, and she said, we want to hear what you're going to do for us tomorrow. So Chris, this answer is for you. What am I going to do for you tomorrow? I'm going to continue to represent you the best way that I know how. I'm going to give thoughtful consideration to every issue. I'm going to dig into the facts. I'm going to look at the various viewpoints, and I'm going to give full deliberative measure to what's going on. That means we're not going to short-circuit the process. We're not going to vote for bills in the middle of the night when we haven't had a chance to read them or when they haven't even been printed. We're not going to take a shortcut and not do our jobs. I'm also going to provide you my independent judgment, Chris. I'm going to make sure that when I go up there and when I look at those issues, I'm not beholden to some special interest group or some pledge or some faction within a political party. I'm beholden to the people of the 59th District. That's who I'm going to work for. And finally, I'm going to advocate for each and every one of you in here. When you have a problem with the state agency, when you have something that needs to be done, you can call on me and I will be your advocate there, as I have advocated for hundreds of people throughout this county when their cases have come before the court's docket, and hundreds of children in our child need a care system when I've advocated for them and tried to make sure that they had a permanent, loving home. That's what I'm going to do for you, Chris. Tomorrow, it's the same thing I've done for you for the last 2 years, and I thank you for the opportunity, all of you, to have served you for 2 years as your state representative.
Okay. Thank you, thank you. Bob, 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Well, again, thank you for being here. Thanks to the Chamber. I would like to introduce a couple people also. My wife, Shirley. We have been married for 44 years. My daughter, Joanne, who came back from a camp today, drove back to be here tonight. It's a spina bifida camp. It's called Midiog, Made in the Image of God. She's a lead counselor up there for the spina bifida kids, and driving back after the forum's over. So thank you for coming down, and thank you all for being here. My bio, I think, ran out back there, but just a quick introduction. I was born in Turin, Kansas, about the size of 400 people. It's a little town between Pratt and Hutchinson. We lived on a farm all of that time, but I grew up, went to Emporia State University, got my teaching degree in political science and math, chose math to be my teaching career for the past 42 years. I'm the Christian conservative candidate in this race. I'm not a career politician. I don't have any career step ladder to climb. Otherwise, I'd have started when I was 20. It just ain't gonna happen now. And the biggest reason I wanted to enter this race is because it's not about I, it's about you. You're the people that needs to be represented. You're the people we need to listen to. I'm not going up there to vote my way. I'm not going up there to kind of show, look at me. I want to be your representative. I'm pro-life. My faith is number one to me. I believe in the Second Amendment rights. I believe in religious freedoms, limited government, and lower taxes. I don't want to go back to the Sebelius Parkinson area. $800 left in the treasury and bills not paid. I want to go back and stay on course or stay on course to where I think we're headed, and by the last fiscal year.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't see that. There it is. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
All
I'm
right.
gonna let you build on that with the first question.
I
though.
will do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you heard me ask the governor candidate this question. At the end of the fiscal year, we were $338 million below what the state estimates were for revenue. How would you propose to fix that problem? Are we cutting programs? And if so, what programs would you propose that we cut?
Is this my question?
This is your question. Answer first, yes.
First of all, you're right. But the second thing that some people fail to recognize, and it's not out there very much, is we had $400 million plus left over after all the bills were paid the last fiscal year. Yeah, have we got to seriously look at that? Absolutely. Do I want to go back and raise taxes? Absolutely not. It's not a tax and spend. We've seen that in Washington way too many times. I don't want to go back to that Sebelius Parkinson area. It wasn't good for Kansas, and I don't believe it's good for Kansas now. I want to stay the course. I don't think anybody here wants to go back and say, hey, give me more taxes. I don't think so. And I don't think the people of this district really want to either. I mean, if they do, that's how I'll vote. But I want to represent the people. They can come up with solutions. We can take them to Topeka and see what we can do. Thank you.
Okay. Blaine, any ideas on this question?
Thank you. I think anybody who sits up here and tells you they have a plan for how they're going to fix this is not giving full respect to the process. That's what we do in Topeka. That's what we'll start out with in January next year and try to figure out what the solution is. The reality is that if these numbers and these trends continue, we are in serious trouble. We are going back to the end of the Sebelius and Parkinson era when we had $800 in the checking account. The projections show that we're going to be down under $50 million by the end of this fiscal year, which will end June 30th next year. That legislature that sits down in January is going to have some serious work to do to try to fix these fiscal problems. And it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to come from canned solutions, and it's not going to come from polling everybody in this district about what you think we ought to do. The reality is we're going to have to cut spending. We're going to have to get creative in how we do that because we're currently in a court case about what 50 cents of every dollar in state spending goes for, and that's K through 12 education. And we're going to have to look at how do we continue to provide those essential services without that revenue. I don't favor increasing taxes. I don't want to see us increase taxes. And honestly, increasing taxes in the spring of 2015 won't show any benefit to the state until 2016. So we're going to have to find a way to get through this problem, and we're going to have to be creative, and we're going to have to be cooperative. We're going to have to work together to find that solution, and we cannot be at each other's throats from day one when that session starts. So do I have the specific answer for you? No, but I'm going to work with the governor and work with the rest of the legislature to try to find those solutions that do the least amount of damage to the citizens of this district and the citizens of this state.
Okay. Thank you. Let's follow up on that 50 cents out of every dollar that you touched on. K-12 spending is a huge amount of the state budget. There's this commission now that's meeting in Topeka to try to find efficiencies in education. If you were on that commission, what kind of recommendations would you make to make K-12 education more efficient? Blaine, this is your question first.
I think we have to look at all of the options on the table, and one of the options I talked about with the Speaker of the House the first year that I was in the legislature was the possibility of looking at year-round school. I think that we spend a lot of time making up for gaps that students have because they're out of school for 3 months, and I'd like to see us look at trying to stop covering the same ground over and over again by keeping our students in school and not having them suffer through that learning gap. Kansas is currently 42nd in the nation in teacher compensation. Kansas spends about 10% of its school budget on administration across the state. So people think it's somewhere around 40 or 50% sometimes when I'm talking to them on the doorsteps. It's not that high. There's not that much fat at that level that can be cut out, and we're constrained by a lot of federal mandates as well. So I welcome the work of the commission. I'd like to hear what they have to suggest. I think we have to put everything on the table at this point, but we have to remember that with the new Gannon decision, we have to follow the 7 Rose factors from Kentucky, and we have to make sure that our outcomes are as good as they can possibly be for our students. So we're still under the gun with that court case, and what we can't do is make cuts that are so deep that our students don't get the education that they need. So I would favor going through this process, and in fact, this Efficiency Commission was one of the things that I supported on the Friday of the education vote weekend and was put into a bill that I worked with on the governor and the Speaker of the House. We got 91 votes in the House to create this commission and have these folks sit down and take a hard look at this. So I do support this effort. I think it's a good effort, and I wish I had the silver bullet that would solve the problem of efficiency in education, but that's why we're looking at it.
Thank you. Bob, spent your entire career in education. Any ideas?
Yeah, I've got a few things about education, absolutely. First of all, we've got to get rid of Common Core. Because we've seen the disastrous testing program that we had last year. That cost Kansas taxpayers lots of millions of dollars. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. We used to come up with our own testing in schools, and we had a great time at it. We knew where our students were. We didn't have to worry about people coming back and forth because we were able to teach. The second thing is, this commission is very important, but I hope parents are on it. I hope common folk people are on it, because they've got to look at that as something that seriously needs to be done. I tell you what I'm upset about. I'm upset about paying taxes to the state of Kansas, and they delegate a lot of money over to various schools. Okay, that's great. But what I don't like is, why do the people over here in this district get to build a $5 million football stadium? And I'm all for football, but why should I have to help pay for that particular $5 million stadium? Let it come back to the people of the districts where they spend the money and let them decide. We've got a great opportunity to change school finance. I hope we take advantage of it and really take a serious look at this situation.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the audience? I'm going to squeeze these in. Minute to respond. Bob, this is your question first. Do you support fossil fuel energy in Kansas?
Absolutely. I think, obviously, I'm looking at, and I know it's not Kansas, but I'm looking at North Dakota. They export more oil, and look at their state, what they're doing. I just think we have an opportunity to do that. I know my opponent went on the RPS system, and it's costing. Honestly, it's costing Kansas taxpayers to do that. I don't agree with that. So yeah, simple answer.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yep, fairly direct question. Blaine?
Thank you, Tony. I favor what's called an all-of-the-above energy policy in Kansas. We get 70% of our energy from coal. We get a lot of our energy from fossil fuels, and those fossil fuels provide jobs not only on this side of the state, but a lot of them on oil and gas severance in the central and western part of the state. And I support those jobs, and I support those industries. I also support us diversifying through the use of renewables, and that's what the Renewable Portfolio Standard is all about. It's about not putting all of our eggs in one basket so that when the price of coal goes up, we don't suffer utility rate increases. And my opponent's got it absolutely absolutely wrong. It's not costing, it's saving. According to Kansas City Power and Light, who provides power to all of the areas around the City of Ottawa and Franklin County and includes selling power to Ottawa, the City of Ottawa, they are investing in a wind farm in Coffee County. Why? Because they say it will save their customers $600 million over the life of that project. Westar itself has said that they think that the use of wind energy and renewables will help reduce utility rates across the state of Kansas. So it's EPA mandates on coal plants and scrubber technology like we've seen at Lacine that are actually raising utility rates, not RPS. I support all of the above when it comes to energy.
Okay, thank you. Another question from the audience. Blaine, I'm going to give you this one first. The Kansas Values Institute has put money into this race. Tell us what it is that they stand for and what you know about this organization, if you agree with their Kansas values.
There are a lot of third parties that put money into races, and I don't know who runs the Kansas Values Institute. I can tell you who runs the Kansas Chamber of Commerce and who runs Americans for Prosperity. Got a mailer here that says, "I'm crushing the dreams of our kids." How ridiculous and negative is that kind of campaigning? And here's one from Americans for Prosperity, which is an adjunct of the Koch brothers, that misrepresents my record and is part of the ongoing smear campaign that's spending thousands of dollars to attack me in this race. Folks, this isn't what politics is about. If my opponent had outside groups that wanted to support him and sing his praises and talk about how great he is, that's fine. And as far as I know, the only mailer I've seen from the Kansas Value Institute talks about my record and truthfully tells what I've done in my time in Topeka. And I'm fine with that. If outside groups want to do that and want to be positive, that's great. When they come in here negative, slinging mud, slandering people, that's wrong. And that's not the kind of politics you and I ought to be about, Bob, if we're really about our kids and our kids' kids.
Bob, what's your response?
Okay, we might heat things up a little bit. Kansas Values Institute, I had no clue what that was. I looked at their website, and it is totally anti-Brownback, totally. It is raising money from used to be Republicans, who are now Democrats, who want to change the direction of our state. That's what they are. I've got articles from Topeka Capital Journal that shows you where money is coming from. And it is coming from Democrats. It is coming from Republicans who switched over to Democrats. And that's not, you're right, that's not what we're about. At least I'm not. I'm up here as a Republican candidate, not something else. The second one, Kansans for Life. And the executive director for Kansans for Life is here. If you don't want to believe me, ask her. There's a reason why my opponent got his endorsement pulled. When he says 100% pro-life, no. Ask Mary Kay Culp. There's a reason why that happened.
Okay, thank you. One final question from the audience, and this is a broad question, but I can't resist it. For both of you, Bob, I'm going to have you answer this question first. What kind of legacy do you want to leave for, one, your family, two, your community, and three, your nation? And I think I'm going to give you maybe 30 seconds to respond.
Wow.
We'll give
We'll
give you a minute and a half. We'll give you 30 seconds on each one of those, okay?
Okay.
So that's your family, your community, and your nation.
All right, thank you. Well, first of all, that I'm a man of faith. That is number one in my life. I have been a Christian ever since I can remember. A born-again Christian when I was 16. And I've lived my faith, and hopefully I've showed the students that as well. And everybody that I come into. I totally, that's number one. Number two, that I love my family, and that I think family and traditional values of the family is most important. Number three, and country, I'm not afraid to stand up here. You know, it was tough deciding to do this. You have to put yourself out here. My opponent had over $18,000 when he started, or at least the last Kansas Governmental Ethics Commission report. When I filed, actually I had negative $105 because I had to pay the filing fee. So it's not about who has the most money. It's not about all the mailings that go out. It's about who really wants to represent you. You're important. And if I leave anything for my country, it's just that I really represented the people that elected me, because it's called the House of Representatives for a reason. I want to get back here and listen to you if I'm elected. I want to have evening meetings. I don't want to wait until Saturday morning when some people are working. I want evening meetings as well, where everybody has the opportunity to ask those questions to their legislatures. I'm not waiting for your response, okay? I want, seriously, you to tell me, because I want to go to
Thank
you
you,
to
Bob.
get it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Blaine, what's your legacy?
For my family, I hope my legacy would be that I loved them and that I did everything that I could to provide them a safe and loving and stable home. I share my opponent's faith, and I've been a Christian since I was a young man. I remember pajama rides. When I called with my mom, we'd go out at 9 o'clock and get a Diet Coke together, and we'd talk about the responsibility that people have to their community, and as particularly people of faith, to give back and to make it better. I hope for my community that when I pass away and I'm gone, that people say he left it better than he found it. That every day he got up and everything he did, whether it was as a volunteer, whether it was as an attorney, whether it was as a family man, whether it was as a representative, that he did it in a way that left it better than he found it. And for my nation, I hope that I'm part of a political reawakening in this country where we stop tearing each other down, where we stop attacking each other, and that we are able to make a political comment on an issue without attacking the other side. I hope that we can get back to that. I hope that we can get back to talking about all of the issues, not just one or two issues, and that we can put those things aside, and maybe even as a party we can get back together and not attack each other as Republicans. We can get back to what Ronald Reagan talked about in his 11th commandment, and thou shalt not speak ill publicly of another Republican. I'd like to see a healing within our party and a healing within our nation. So that's what I hope my legacy is, that I'm a part of that.
Thank you. Now it's time for closing statements. Blaine, I'm going to let you go first. 1 minute.
Well, again, I want to thank all of you for coming out here tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to visit with you about this race. The theme of my race is to put people over politics and to move Kansas back to basics. I think it's important that we have representatives that don't go to Topeka with preconceived notions, but go to Topeka to learn about the issues, to give full, deliberative consideration to the issues that come before them, and to always keep in mind the people back home. I've upset some special interests in Topeka, and that's why they're spending thousands of dollars to try to buy this seat, because they're not happy about the fact that I've put you first, that I didn't vote to raise your property taxes, that I didn't vote to jeopardize local institutions like Neosho County Community College by giving tax breaks to a concrete plant in Neosho County, and because I didn't vote to increase utility rates because it would have been more convenient for companies that are highly invested in fossil fuels. I voted to put you first, and I'll continue to vote to put you first if you send me back to Topeka, because we need to get Kansas back to basics and put the special interest at the back of the line. Thank you for the honor of serving you as your representative from the 59th District.
Bob, closing statement.
Okay. Again, thank you all for being here. I hope I've shown that there is a difference, and that's one of the reasons I decided to run. You should have a choice. You should be up to date on what's going on. I want to go up there to represent you. I don't want to be a legislator in the news for the most missed votes. I don't want to be a legislator in the news for voting with Democrats. I want to be your legislator. And if you say this is where we need to go, that's where we'll go. I'm not going up there to represent me. I've said that. I'm not going up there for any kind of situations other than, again, to represent you. When I decided to enter this race, and I'm going to leave it at this, Shirley and I prayed, and the one thing that we said, first of all, please keep me humble. I would like to win, but whatever happens, please make sure it's for the glory of God. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
We are getting in the home stretch, and we're pretty close to being on time, which is surprising to me, probably to some of you. We've got a couple candidates for the 5th District of Franklin County Commission. I see them coming up, Don Stottlemyre, Randy Renaud. And we've got a couple candidates who do not have any primary opposition I'd like to introduce while these guys are coming up. Colton Waymeyer is a Republican candidate for the 1st District. There's Colton right there. Yeah, I'll give him a hand. And Steve Harris is a Republican candidate for the 4th District. So there's Steve. Give him a hand. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. You'll have an opportunity, if you so choose, to vote for them in November. Randall and Don are up here, and again, they're candidates on the Republican ticket for the 5th District. And so, Don, I'm going to give you the opportunity to make a 2-minute opening statement to lead off.
I want to thank everybody for being here this evening. First time I was on this stage was with my 4-H club where we was doing square dance contest. So I hope this ain't my last appearance on the stage. So, but you know, the bio is in front of you. When I signed on as a commissioner, was the first 5 commissioners, and it's one thing that first thing I was proved to be wrong. I voted against the 5 commissioners because I didn't think that was the answer. But you know, I was proved to me after I was elected in and on the 5 commissioners that it is a good idea. It does give a big separation to the county and gives better opportunity for to represent a smaller area and be able to get out there more, make a lot more contacts with your cities, your communities, your fire departments, and I've tried to do that to the best of my ability. Been a lifelong resident of Franklin County. 5 generations of my family's lived in the townships that we're in right now. I've worked all my life in Franklin County, been a business owner, a couple of businesses still own in Franklin County, been a home business, building business inspector for 21 years here in the county. I've tried to be involved in every volunteer group and nonprofit organization. I've tried to always make good contact with, when even Tony was our state representatives and all of our state representatives and senators. I've always tried to keep a very close relation. And once they're elected, I could care less what party they're from, as long as they're ready to help our community and help us lead a better life in Franklin County. And I'll let Mr. Renaud take over.
Okay. Thank you. Randall, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Also thank the Chamber and the people who made this possible this evening through the Farm Bureau. I want to thank my campaign, people who've helped me, my treasurer, people putting up my Facebook and web pages, my ads, people who let me put the signs in their yards, people who carried the petitions around for my nomination. Those people are important to me, and I really appreciate the help they've given me. And I do appreciate the fact that you're here tonight to listen to us and hopefully help you make a decision. My campaign is based on some very simple, fundamental things about government. First of all, we're going to represent the people. I represent the people in the 5th District, but I also represent the people in Franklin County. And you do that by listening to the people, and that will be the #1 objective that I have. Secondly, I want to provide the employees of the county the best that we can possibly give them. The employees of Franklin County are the biggest investment we have. And as a commissioner, I want to make sure that they have the equipment they need and the support they need, the training they need in order to do their jobs. My job is to help them to do their job. Thirdly, I would like to make sure that we have in place a way to evaluate all the programs in the county, the services we do, the departments we have, our resources, in relation to effectiveness and efficiency. We're going to talk about budgets and taxes and whatever else. Efficiency and effectiveness are 2 crucial components of that help regulate the budget and how we will be able to handle it. And lastly, I want to work collaboratively with all the other 4 commissioners. I want to help move Franklin County to the forefront, that we will be well ahead in development of economics, that we can bring jobs to the people, and that we are proactive instead of reactive. Thank you.
Thank you, Randall. All right, you touched on my first question, and so I'm going to direct it to you to answer first. It's a common story in any level of government. Currently, revenues are tending to stay level or decrease. Demands for services seem to be increasing. You just talked about efficiency. Do you have other ideas of how to do essentially more services with limited funding?
#1, when you build a budget, I don't want a piece of paper that says, oh, last year's budget was this and this is what you work with. I've done that in the school system for years. My budget went from 30-some thousand to 20-some thousand for my building. I lost about 1/3 of it. It was already in these line items. We're not going to do that. We take a blank piece of paper and we go to each department head, each individual that's in the county, the departments and resources that are there, and say, build a budget from 0. You put in the line item you need and the amount of money. We're not going to work the other way. We don't need to start out assuming it's already there. Then, I think we take a look at effectiveness and efficiency in those departments. Let the people who are doing the work, the ladies on the third floor in the appraiser's office can tell you what they need or what they don't need. The man on the road grader can tell us what he can use and how it will work the best. We need to listen to those people so we can build our budgets to fit them. I think we need to look at user fees, and I can explain more about that later. We get into that. Services, contract services versus otherwise. United government, what can we do with the city? Wyandotte County has a united type of government. I'm sure there's some areas within the city and commissions and the other cities in this county that we can work with to help determine the best way to get the most money out of our budget.
Thank you. Don?
Yeah, I know we instilled here, of course, when I started, the county was getting $750,000 a year in revenue off the county idle money. Now we get about $30,000. The state pulled our demand transfers a few years ago. That cost us $500,000 in the middle of the year with the budgets already set. So we have, with administrator type operation now, and we're working all our department heads. They do a great job, and we have challenged them over the years, the last few years especially, we know you got to provide the service. We know what kind of level you got to provide the service, but we're giving you the challenge of being able to do it and go out there and find the most efficient, not the cheapest, the most efficient and the best way to operate your business. And our HR department, having an HR department that's been developed over the last few years, and administrator over the last few years has added to that immensely. I know one of the things, even we just don't think about our budget. We think about the townships and the city's budgets also. And by doing that, we've invented to allow cities and townships and so forth, when we bid on different articles of equipment or road surfaces or rock salt or anything that we purchase, we allow the cities to piggyback off of us and to get a cheaper and lower price.
Okay, thank you, Don. This is a related question, a little bit different twist. Recent changes in the structure and the operation of the Franklin County Development Council has indicated increased interest in economic development countywide. Should you be elected to the commission, what would be your level of commitment to supporting these efforts, that is economic development efforts, through both policy and funding decisions? Don, this is your question first.
Right, and I know I've kind of been in this from the ground floor of it, and we did make a change here in the last year and a half, 2 years, and we broke it up. It used to be contracted through the Ottawa Chamber, and now we split it off, and we have, those are two individual positions now, and Jeff Seymour has did a great job since he's come from Oklahoma up here to help us. He come from a good background, and Jeff has done a lot of good work, and that's one of the few budgets this year. They didn't ask for a big increase, but they did ask for a small increase, like $2,500, and we do share that cost with the City of Ottawa equally, and I think it's a wonderful endeavor, and I think Jeff's doing a great job, and he comes before our commissions and works with both the city and the county boards, and he also visits that we never seen in the past. He also visits all the communities and small towns and offers up his services as our economic development director, and he's just doing a great job. And that's been our main, all the commissioners are 100% behind what Jeff is doing and the direction he's going with our economic development.
Okay, thank you. Randall?
I definitely think that the economic development of our county is very crucial to not only handling the financial shortcomings we're going to be seeing, but also for the living conditions for those residents that we have in our county. We can make this county an unbelievable place to live for all of us and for those that are following us. Economic development, like the extending the runway at the airport, we are going to have to do those type of initiatives if we're going to increase the economic opportunities for companies and businesses to move to this county. We're dealing with all the cities. I mentioned earlier, like the Wyandotte County United Government, but even collaborating with all the cities within the county, the different agencies within the county, to make sure that we are providing the opportunity with each other to boost those economic opportunities for business that want to come in here and to do that.
Okay, thank you. This is a question from the audience. It's fairly direct, so I'm going to give you a minute to answer this. Randall, I'm going to let you handle it first. How important is it to attend the city council meetings of the towns in your district?
Well, I think it's very critical to represent, if I'm going to represent Lane and Rantoul and Imes and Peoria and Wellsville and everybody else out there, to be involved with those people. It's not going to be come and talk to me. I will be there and be able to interact and mingle and find out. It's like, my analogy was going to be like going to church on Sunday. It's not what's there, it's the other 6 days of the week. And being a council member is not what happens on Monday mornings and Wednesday mornings, it's what happens the other days of the week. As a commissioner, I will be involved with the county, the people in the county, the activities in the county, in order to find out what the county residents are saying. This is what we need to help move this county on. I take a new position up in Kansas City where I've been driving. I go through Heritage Park and Shawnee Mission Park, and you see those areas up there. They have really made opportunities available for their people, and that's what we're going to have to do.
Okay, thank you. Don, same question.
Yeah, this is one thing that I have really instilled, and a lot of the commissioners have followed the line of what I've done over the years. I do attend all city commission meetings in my area, and I give county reports 5 times a month, twice a month in Wellsville because they meet twice a month, once a month in Lane, once a month in Rantoul, and once a month to the Wellsville Chamber of Commerce. And I was also recognized earlier this spring it was my 300th meeting that I attended at Wellsville City Commission. And it seems like, I guess they figured I'm there all the time. They put me on the regular agenda, so I'm an agenda item now at their meeting. But, and that's what I've always been, the big thing is, I know that's what somebody asked me the first time I ran, what are you going to do for our town? And I said nothing that I wouldn't do for any other town. And throughout the county and including my district, and I just always felt that way.
Okay. One more question that I have, and it's a big picture question, but I want to try to squeeze it in. We talked about economic development initiatives. What other initiatives do you all have that would be a high priority for you to improve the quality of life, to improve the efficiency of life here in Franklin County? Don, I'm going to let you tackle it first.
Okay. Well, what most people don't know, every 3 years, the economic development and the chambers all get and they visit all the communities in the cities and the towns and throughout the county. And up till 6 years ago, they had it categorized. And categorically, the ambulance, fire department, communications were always on the top. But up to 6 years ago, since that period, water has moved up to number one. That's been the number one issue in all of Franklin County for the last 6 years, whether people realize it or not. And I know that's why I am the state president of the Resource Conservation Development, and I know we brought several programs into Franklin County to help. We brought in a drought mitigation team from Nebraska to work with the community. We brought in NRCS and a lot of their programs to help with our water issues. I've attended a lot of water board meetings to do whatever we could do to help with that issue. And that's one of the things, Commissioner, just like Mr. Renaud says, a commissioner needs to be more than just a Monday and a Wednesday. He needs to be out there. My wife will tell you I leave about 5 o'clock in the morning, and a lot of times 3 or 4 or 5 meetings later, get home about 9 o'clock that night. So I do think that's one of the big things is the commissioner has to have his finger on what's going on completely throughout your community.
Randall, what kind of initiatives do you have in mind?
The first thing that I think I would like to do is when I get down with the other commissioners is to talk about the long-range visions that they have of the county, because they're coming from their parts of the county representing those people, and that I would get that same feel from my area. I'm talking 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. We've got to start looking at 10 years and 20 years down the road, the vision that we're going to have for the county, because now's the time that you start developing the economic opportunities from whether it's parks and rec or to whether it's industrial, and what is it that will fit and mold in and be compatible with the things that we have within our current county. Just because it will bring money doesn't necessarily mean that it's a great thing for the county. On the other hand, it's a thing that we have to take a look at the opportunities that are going to be down the road for our children and their children. It's not going to stay the same. I can't go back and say I'm a 6th generation Kansans. I'm from Illinois, where 3 of our governors are currently spending time in prison. So I can tell you right now that the idea of, and they're broke, and Kansas is going to be in the same boat in fiscal year 2016. And so the economic development is going to be a collaborative thing among the communities, the towns, the agencies, and the other commissioners to set a vision for this county.
Okay, thank you. We're out of time. It's time for closing statements. Randall, I'm going to let you go first. 1 minute, please.
That's to me.
That's to you. Yep.
Well, I have my bio back there. My background has been in the education system, but I've been obviously involved in a lot of different things. I will tell you that I am a person who can make tough decisions, a person that will study the issues, a person who will listen to the people that are talking to me. But I also will know that, as I said, and you heard earlier the people say that our state is headed for a financial shortfall. And when that happens, it's going to trickle down to the county government. I do not want to see cutting budget, meaning cutting jobs. That's not cutting budget, that's cutting services. We need to do a budget from the ground up. And I mentioned earlier the way we would go about doing that, and with the aid of the other commissioners, we can provide the same services, better services, more effectively, more efficiently, and perhaps save money, and look at other uses such as user fees and types of things to get it. I'd be glad to visit with anyone at any time about my ideas and the things that I think we can do, but it's going to come from the individuals that I represent, and I certainly appreciate the vote. Thank you.
Thanks. Don, 1 minute closing statement.
Yeah, basically, you know, I've always been a person that wants to get the community involved. We've had chipboard. You know what that is? It's County Highway Improvement Plan. It actually is one person from each township, and they meet a couple times a year, and then they meet with Public Works Director, and then they give direction to the commissioners of what they want to see done and what's going to happen. And actually, in the last 10 years, we've developed 50 miles of hard surface roads in Franklin County, and that's more than they've done 100 years before. And we've tried to do it with money on hand, and just kept continuing to work with the other communities, just like I intend to, if I'm reelected, to just keep doing. Somebody asked, what's your agenda? I says, the agenda is just to keep improving on our county and keep improving on what we do. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Candidates for Franklin County Sheriff, Mike Reed and Jeff Richards. All right. Let's get right to it. I'm going to allow Jeff to make the opening statement first. 2 minutes for an opening statement, Jeff.
Okay. Thank you for being here. My name is Jeff Richards. I live here in Ottawa with my wife Michelle and our 4 kids. They go to the Ottawa public schools here. My wife and I are involved in several nonprofit and charitable organizations through volunteer work, and we attend the Church of the Nazarene here in Ottawa. I was privileged enough in April of 2013 to be elected through a special convention as a sheriff, and then Governor Brownback did make that appointment. So for the past 15 months, I have served as the sheriff of Franklin County. Prior to that, I've been in law enforcement for about 25 years. I've served everything from a patrol officer to a traffic officer, SWAT team operator and team leader, detective, and I've also been involved in some government leadership things. I've served on several committees. I was a member of the Franklin County Planning Commission, served as chair of that for a short time, and I was elected to the Ottawa City Commission, served there. And I've been able to take that experience and in law enforcement and in the leadership and take that and transition that into helping lead the sheriff's office. Since I've been there, we have done some restructuring. Some of the concerns that the public had, and as a member of the public, I shared those concerns, was the patrol coverage that we had in the county. We've done some restructuring of personnel and some shift changes to improve that and increase that. I've looked at some budgets. We had some supposed contracts that maybe weren't really in existence, and I asked some tough questions, and we drilled down into some things. We've had to we've restructured the way that we do a few of our medical and mental health things in the jail, but saved us about $50,000 to $60,000 a year. We carried pagers, even though we didn't really need them. We were paying for them. We don't do that anymore. So those are some of the things that I've been doing, and that I'd like to continue to do, and I look forward to the questions.
Okay, thank you. Randall, or Mike, rather, opening statement, sorry.
I'd like to start with saying thank you all for being here this evening. My name is Michael L. Reed, better known as Mike Reed. I am married. My wife and I, Deborah, have 7 children and 7 grandchildren. Our kids have gone through the school systems here in Franklin County. Franklin County has been my home for over 30 years. I grew up in a small community in north central Kansas on the farm. Came from a good moral value in the Lutheran Church. Carried those on when I went to college at Fort Hays State University, graduated with a degree in industrial education and endorsement in teaching. I have over 26 years of experience in law enforcement. Every bit of it is right here in Franklin County. I have worked for all 3 of the agencies here in Franklin County, being the City of Ottawa, City of Wellsville, and Franklin County. I have achieved supervisory position with 2 of those places. City of Ottawa, I became a sergeant. City of Wellsville, I became a sergeant, and then later became the chief of police, where I worked with small budgets with small amounts of money. And we had major budget constraints. I've been a school resource officer. I've been a DARE officer. I've been in a narcotics division. I've also been investigated homicides, rapes, crimes against children, bank robberies, thefts, insurance fraud, internal investigations, and numerous other things. I have 8 years as a volunteer firefighter, so I know how the fire departments work. I have also been a first responder, so I know how those work. That's kind of real quick what my qualifications are, and I know that as sheriff, I don't know everything, and that I will need to rely on some help, and I spoke with former Sheriff Craig Davis, who's agreed to help me with that. One of the main goals that I really want to watch is the budget, and that will be done by cutting some of the fat off the top. I believe the Sheriff's Department has too much at the top. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mike, I'm going to direct this first question to you. Franklin County is a big county, and you're running to be sheriff of the entire county. How do you assure that all of the county is covered adequately?
One of the ways to do this is to get the officers out of their patrol cars and get them involved in the communities. When I worked for Randy Hinterleiter in Wellsville, the way he did that was to offer to buy, if there was a ball game going on, he would offer to buy the officer something to drink if they just get out of their car and go do that. That's one of the things that I want to implement, is to try to get the officers out of the car, get them into the community, and get them talking to people. If they see a farmer out in the field cutting hay, stop and visit with him if he's, broke down or has a minute to visit. I think that's one of the big problems we have is City of Ottawa, which I realize is part of the county, is where all the excitement is at, and that's where the officers really want to gravitate to. But the main thing is that we need to cover the outlying areas in the county, the Lane, the Rantoul, the Imes, Peoria. And to do that, the officers are going to have to get out. They're going to have to get out of their cars, and that's one of the things that I'm going to push. I know sheriffs before me have tried to do that, and that's one of the things that I really want to try for and get the people to strive for, is to get them out of the car, involved with the public, to go to the things that are occurring in the communities, not just drive through and wave as they go by. Stop and visit with the kids that are playing ball in the park. That helps get them involved. That helps them get them out in the county where they need to be.
Jeff, your thoughts?
Well, what I have done to ensure that we have that is I had touched on with the restructuring of our staffing, so that we had more individuals assigned to patrol, and then we redid the schedule so that it puts more patrol officers out on the street at a time. We've increased our patrol in those other areas through other ways as well. We've increased and stepped up our DARE program, which gets us out into, we are now in all of the school districts in the county. We had to get approval through a school board to do that. We were in 2 of the school districts, but we met with Wellsville so that we're in there. That gets us out in there. And then, as was discussed on the previous panel, I attend city council meetings, and I'm out at those. I can't make all of them because there's one night a week when we have, or during the month, that we have 4 of them going on at the same time, and I just, for some reason, can't seem to make it and fall 4 places at once. But I do send people out to those meetings, and so that we can be there to let those cities know what we're doing, and then to get feedback from them, and then we are try to be as responsive as we can be to the needs that people call and bring to our attention.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question from the audience, and Jeff, I'm going to direct this to you first. It's pretty straightforward, but it's big. What is the primary law enforcement problem in Franklin County, and what is your plan to address it? In a minute and a half.
Okay. Well, what our biggest problem is very simple, and that is that we have a drug problem in this county. The main drug that is killing our county is meth. And what we're doing with that is working with our drug enforcement unit, which is made up of detectives from the Franklin County Sheriff's Office, as well as the Ottawa Police Department, and the county attorney's office, and we have meetings about this, how we're going to address this. It's not just the sheriff's office. We have other resources, and then it has to go into the prosecution side as well. The increased patrol it plays a role in that, but if we continue to just do that, all we're going to do is respond to calls. Drugs drives most of our violence and our property crimes in this county. We know that. So what we have done recently is we started a new program where we took some people out of patrol, put them on a specialized unit, and they're going out to target the problem areas and those problems that we have going on in our county, and they've been very successful. They're going out and making the arrests that need to be made, and that's evident by the fact that our case filings are up at the county attorney's office, our bookings are up in the jail. I don't think it's because crime has risen, but we've done a better job of maybe detecting it and getting those things solved. And so that's our biggest problem is drugs, and what we're doing is we're going out and trying to make sure that we get the right people arrested and get them off the streets so they can't commit any more crime.
Okay. Thank you. Mike?
I have to agree with Sheriff Richards that the biggest problem in Franklin County right now is due to the drug problem that we have. The Drug Enforcement Unit is our front line for that. Detective Gilgis and I started that unit back in 1988, so I know how important it is and how well they can work. Methamphetamine is the biggest issue that we have. As the drug unit in the past worked, the drug unit in the future will continue to work. It needs to have the support of the people. To do that, we need to have strong Crime Stoppers. We need to have strong neighborhood watch. When we first started the unit, 90% of our arrests were made because of tips we received from the public. In order for a drug unit to be effective, they still have to get tips from the public. To do that, we need people to be out there to be seen by the public. The prosecution is important. If you have a case you take to the prosecutor and he won't prosecute it, you've wasted your time. So therefore, they all have to work hand in hand. And as he said, it's not just a county problem. It's not just a city problem. It is a county, a city, a state, and a national problem. And it's something that needs to be addressed. And like Mr. Richards said also, the drug problem leads to probably 85, 95% of all of our other crimes in the county.
Okay, thank you. There's been some discussion at the state level, I think mostly, about consolidating city and county law enforcement services. Would you be in favor of this, and why or why not? Mike, this is your question first.
I know years ago when I was on patrol with one of the sheriff's deputies, we sat down and we kicked back and forth the idea of the joint consolidation of a city-county kind of police department, like what they have in Manhattan, Riley County Police Department. First thing that has to happen is a resolution has to be adopted by the county and city commissioners. They have to go to the state, and then the state has to adopt that resolution to allow that to happen. In talking to people that are from Riley County Police Department, it does not save any money, which is one of the big things that they say it does, is that it saves money. It doesn't necessarily increase the coverage that the people get. The one big thing that it would do, is that it would allow, if there's a sheriff's deputy that needs assistance out in the county, it will allow a city officer to go assist him without having to be asked for that help, which is the way it is right now. As far as whether I'm in favor or not, I think right now in Franklin County that would not be the best alternative. So therefore, at this time, I would not be in favor of the joint city-county police department.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, same question.
This topic comes up periodically, and it has come up a couple times while I've been in this office. There's two different ways to go. There are some people that think that we should do away with the sheriff's office and have a county-wide police department. As Mike said, it does take literally an act of Congress, state Congress, to get that done. The other option is to dissolve the police departments and have only a sheriff's office. Well, a police department is an identity for a lot of cities. It does work pretty well in Riley County, but Riley County is a much different demographic there. It is mostly Manhattan. That's not the way that we are here. So as far as consolidation of services, we are able to do that. We have a STAR team, a SWAT team, that's made up of the sheriff deputies and police officers with Ottawa Police Department. Our crash team for major traffic crash investigations is made up of, it's a joint team as well. And the sheriff's office already does the dispatching services for the police department as well as the rest of the county. So we have consolidated those services, but as far as actually just doing away with one or the other and having only one agency, I don't believe that it would work as well here in Franklin County as it does other places, so I wouldn't be in favor of it.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to ask one final question. You all both touched on this a little bit, but I want to be a little bit more specific. One of the key aspects of law enforcement is keeping members of the public informed about activities and programs in which law officials are engaged. What practices would you follow to help ensure that communication between the sheriff's office and Franklin County residents is as effective as possible? Jeff, this is your question first.
Okay, well, when we have anything that happens in the county that is of a public interest type thing, I do contact the Ottawa Herald and COFO. The Franklin County also has a web page and public media on there. We've tried to use that. There's not too many people in the county that are on that. But as far as keeping people informed on a regular basis, that's part of the purpose of attending the city council meetings and going to various civic organizations and speaking. Is to make sure that everybody is aware of what's going on and just trying to be as transparent as possible, not just with activities, but as far as things like our budget and other things that are going on as well at the sheriff's office. And so speaking at public meetings and having things set on the record is a big part of that, and then attending the different meetings.
Okay, thank you. Mike, same question.
In order to get information out, you have to, make contact, like Mr. Richards said. You utilize what you have there: the newspaper, the radio, the internet. Those are the three big ways we get things out. Another way I know that the City of Ottawa was used, and I don't remember the acronym for it, but it was a phone service where you could sign up for it, and if there was an alert, such as an Amber Alert or something that went out, it came directly from dispatch. And that's one of those things that, I feel need to be more publicized for the community so that they're aware of this, so they can be informed. The other thing is, I believe that, as the head of the sheriff's office, it's your responsibility to see to it that those things are done for the city. You need to, as Mr. Richards says, he goes to the city council meetings, which is good. That's what needs to be done. There shouldn't be somebody else speaking for you. It should be your talking. Just going through the radio stations. We have the local TV station here in town, which is not available out in the county. If you had to, contact some of your other TV stations, such as TV5 or Fox 4, that a lot of people in this area watch, or, the stations out at Topeka. Again, it's just, making sure the information gets out by the easiest means that you have.
Okay. Thank you. It's time for closing statements. Mike, I'm going to let you make the first closing statement. 1 minute.
Okay. With my experience, over 26 years that I have, I've been in administration, I've been from the bottom, I've been to the top. I know the demographics in Franklin County. I've made this my home. I've worked in the county, I've worked in the city. I know how the different areas work. I know the difference in the people between the different areas. I know, the farming communities. I grew up on a farm. The education that I've had through college as a teacher has helped me to learn to deal with people. Being a chief of police has helped me learn to deal with people and how to administer people. I've had people tell me that they like to follow me. I had an attorney one time tell me that if his people had to be arrested by someone, they wished it was me to arrest them because I treated them like a human being. And I think as a police officer, to get cooperation with your people, that's one of the biggest things you have to remember, is to treat people the way you would like to be treated if you were in their shoes. I want to say thank you for coming here tonight, and I appreciate your support, hopefully by a vote on August 5th.
Jeff, 1 minute.
Okay, since we've been down at the sheriff's office, some of the other things that I wanted to touch on that I'd like to continue. We had some things that we've talked about how county employees are very important. When I got there, sheriff deputies didn't have winter coats issued to them. We've changed that. We fixed that. We have to take care of those employees. We do. That's just something that we have to do. And we've had to do some other things as well as with the budget. There are certain things that are in the budget that are not in the budget, but we have to fund them every day. And so I'm trying to show transparency and to get those things back in an operating budget so that we can show the public this is how much it really cost us, because a trust fund to fund certain things, that trust fund is not going to be there forever. And so it's the responsible thing to do is to get that back in the budget so we're honest with what it is that we're doing and get things moving forward. We have some really good people down at the sheriff's office. Personnel hasn't changed much since I've been there, but I believe that we have raised the level of professionalism, and that has been because of leadership, and I believe I've provided that in the last 15 months, and I'd appreciate your vote on August 5th.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Would you please, before we leave, would you please join me in giving a hand to all the candidates tonight? This is a big deal. They put themselves out there. We ought to thank them for their willingness to do that. Just to let you know, in case the calendar is eluding you, advanced voting started yesterday, so you can do advanced voting. It goes until noon on August 4th. The primary election is August 5th. I don't think I need to remind anybody in this room to go out and vote. You wouldn't be here if you weren't serious about voting. I appreciate you being here tonight. I know the Chamber of Commerce and who else do I need to thank? The Franklin County Farm Bureau Association appreciate you being here tonight as well. Thank you very much. Have a pleasant evening.